I never expected that pointing out a piece of jewelry would change my entire life. But when I saw my deceased mother's ring on a stranger's finger, I had no choice but to speak up. What happened next left a billionaire unconscious on my restaurant floor. Before we dive in, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. My name is Delilah, and 2 years ago I lost the most important person in my world. My mother Constance fought cancer for 8 months, and I watched her get weaker every single day while medical bills piled up like snow in a blizzard. She passed away on a Tuesday morning in March, clutching my hand and wearing the one piece of jewelry she refused to take off, even in the hospital. Her emerald ring with intricate silver roses carved around the band. It had been my great-grandmother's, then my grandmother's, then hers. 3 generations of strong women had worn that ring, and Mom made me promise it would stay with her forever. I kept that promise. I watched them close her casket with that ring on her finger. I stood in the rain at Greenwood Cemetery as they lowered her into the ground, knowing that ring was going to rest with her for eternity. It was the only valuable thing we owned, worth maybe $3,000, but to me it was priceless. So you can imagine my shock when I'm working my second double shift this week at Romano's Diner, exhausted and running on my 4th cup of coffee, and this man walks in wearing a $15,000 suit and acting like he owns the world. Theodore Blackwell. I didn't know his name then, but I could tell he had money by the way he snapped his fingers at the other waitresses and complained that his water wasn't cold enough. But what made my heart stop wasn't his attitude. It was the ring on his left pinky finger, the exact same emerald ring my mother wore every day of her life. The same silver roses carved around the band. The same tiny chip on the emerald where Mom accidentally hit it against the kitchen sink while doing dishes. I have a photo of her wearing that ring in my apron pocket right now, taken just 3 days before she died. This man was wearing my mother's ring, the ring that was supposed to be 6 feet underground with her body. And when I saw it, my hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped the coffee pot I was holding. Let me tell you about my life before that Tuesday night changed everything. For 2 years since Mom died, I've been working double shifts at Romano's Diner just to keep my head above water. The medical bills from her cancer treatment are crushing me. Even with insurance, we owed over $40,000 when she passed. Chemotherapy, radiation, experimental treatments that didn't work, hospital stays that stretched for weeks. I'm 23 years old and I feel like I'm drowning in debt that isn't even mine. My apartment is a studio the size of most people's closets. I sleep on a futon that doubles as my couch, and my kitchen is basically a hot plate and a mini fridge. Most nights I eat whatever leftover food I can take home from the diner. Ramon, the cook, always makes sure there's extra soup or day-old bread for me. He knew my mom from when she used to pick me up from my high school job here 5 years ago. Everyone at Romano's loved Constance. She had this way of making people feel seen, you know. She'd ask about Ramon's kids, remember the names of the regular customers' grandchildren, always had a kind word for everyone. I keep her photo in my apron pocket. It's from her 50th birthday party just 6 months before the diagnosis. She's laughing at something my Uncle Rick said, and that emerald ring catches the light from the restaurant candles. She's wearing the simple blue dress she saved for special occasions, but that ring makes her look like royalty. Mom never took it off, not once. When she was in the hospital getting chemo and her fingers swelled up, she panicked about removing it. The nurses had to use soap to get it off for her MRI, and she cried the whole time. That's when she told me the story I'd heard 100 times before, but this time it felt different, more urgent. Delilah, this ring belonged to your great-grandmother Rose. She gave it to your grandmother Alina when she got married. Alina gave it to me on my wedding day. 3 generations of strong women have worn this ring through everything. Good times, hard times, heartbreak, joy. It holds all of our strength. She grabbed my hand with surprising force for someone so weak. Promise me something, baby. When I'm gone, this ring stays with me. I want to take all that strength with me, and I want Rose and Alina to know I kept it safe. Promise me. I promised her that day, and I kept that promise. When the funeral director asked about jewelry, I told them the ring stayed on. I watched them close the casket with Mom wearing her blue dress and that emerald ring. I signed papers stating that all jewelry would remain with the deceased. I have copies of everything in a folder at home. So when Theodore Blackwell walked into Romano's that Tuesday night, wearing his tailored suit and looking around like he was slumming it, I thought he was just another wealthy jerk. The kind of customer who tips 5% and complains about everything. I had no idea he was wearing my mother's ring, or that seeing it would turn my entire world upside down. Theodore Blackwell ordered the most expensive thing on our menu, the ribeye steak, and made a point of telling me it better be cooked perfectly or he'd send it back. He complained about the lighting, the music, even the temperature of the restaurant. I've dealt with difficult customers before, but this man seemed to take pleasure in making everyone around him uncomfortable. He snapped his fingers at Maria when she walked by, demanding more bread. He criticized the wine selection to Carmen, our manager, loud enough for other customers to hear. I was refilling his coffee for the third time, trying to stay professional despite his condescending attitude, when I got a clear view of his left hand. That's when my entire world tilted sideways. The emerald ring on his pinky finger caught the light from the overhead lamp, and I saw those unmistakable silver roses carved around the band. My mother's ring. The ring that was supposed to be buried 6 feet underground in Greenwood Cemetery. My hand started shaking so violently that coffee spilled onto the table. Theodore looked up annoyed and snapped, "Watch what you're doing. This suit costs more than you make in a month." But I barely heard him. I was staring at that ring, my mind racing through impossible explanations. Grave robbers. Did the funeral home lie to me? Did someone switch out the ring before the burial? None of it made sense. The longer I stared, the more details I recognized. There was the tiny chip on the emerald where Mom accidentally hit it against the kitchen sink while washing dishes. There were the delicate engravings that my great-grandmother Rose had commissioned from a jewelry maker in Boston back in 1952. This wasn't just similar to my mother's ring. This was my mother's ring. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and found the photo I always carry. My mother at her 50th birthday party, laughing and radiant, that exact same ring sparkling on her finger. I held the phone next to Theodore's hand, comparing every detail. The chip, the roses, the way the silver band curved at just that specific angle. Identical. "Excuse me, sir," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "That ring you're wearing." Theodore looked up from his steak, clearly irritated by the interruption. "What about it?" I took a deep breath, feeling like I was about to jump off a cliff. "That's my mother's ring, sir. She was buried with it 2 years ago." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Theodore's face went red, and he slammed his fork down on the table. "Are you out of your mind? This ring has been in my family for decades. Some waitress's mother couldn't possibly own something this valuable." His words hit me like a physical blow. Some waitress's mother. As if my mom was nobody. As if the woman who worked 3 jobs to keep food on our table, who fought cancer with more courage than this man could ever imagine, was beneath his notice. "Sir, I have proof," I said, showing him the photo on my phone. "This was taken 3 days before she died." Theodore barely glanced at the picture before dismissing it with a wave. "Costume jewelry. Probably bought it at some discount store to look like the real thing." He looked me up and down with disgust. "People like you always think you deserve more than you have." That's when something inside me snapped. Something inside me broke when Theodore dismissed my mother as just some waitress. I've spent 2 years accepting that the world sees me as invisible, expendable, not worth much. But my mother, Constance Morrison, was worth everything. She deserved respect, even in death, especially in death. "Sir, you're wrong," I said, my voice getting stronger. "Let me tell you exactly what that ring looks like underneath, details you couldn't possibly know unless you'd seen it up close for years." Theodore's expression shifted slightly, the first crack in his arrogant confidence. "There's an inscription inside the band that says, 'Forever Bloom' in script handwriting. My great-grandmother had it engraved in 1952. The emerald has a small chip on the left side that happened when my mom was washing dishes in 1998. And if you look really closely at the silver roses, one of them has a tiny scratch from when I accidentally dropped the ring while trying it on as a kid." Theodore's face went pale. He looked down at the ring, then back at me, but said nothing. I can also tell you that the ring is a size 6.5, and it gets loose when the weather is humid, I continued. My mom always had to twist it back into place during the summer months. I pulled out my phone again and zoomed in on the photo. Look at the way the light hits it in this picture. See that specific pattern? That's not costume jewelry, sir. That's real emerald, real silver, and real family history. By now, other customers were starring. Maria had stopped serving other tables to watch. Carmen, our manager, was standing by the kitchen door, clearly torn between protecting her employee and avoiding a scene with someone who obviously had money. Theodore tried to regain control. Look, even if this ring is similar to your mother's, that doesn't mean it's the same one. There could be dozens of rings like this. But his voice lacked the confidence it had before. He was scrambling. Then you won't mind showing me the receipt for when you bought it, I said. Or maybe some documentation from your family showing how long it's been in your possession, because I have my mother's death certificate right here in my purse. I have the funeral home documents stating that all jewelry would remain with the deceased. I have photos dating back years of her wearing this exact ring. Theodore's hands started shaking. I don't have to prove anything to you. Actually, you do, I said, pulling out my phone. Because I'm calling the police right now. If you legitimately own this ring, you'll have paperwork, but if you don't, then we have a problem. That's when Theodore Blackwell, this powerful man who walked into our diner like he owned the world, started to panic. And what he said next changed everything I thought I knew about my mother's life. Wait, he said, his voice cracking. Don't call them, please, you don't understand. Your mother, she worked for me. Theodore's admission that he knew my mother hit me like a freight train, but before I could process what that meant, something else happened. His face went chalk white, and he clutched his chest with his right hand while frantically trying to pull the ring off his left pinky with the other. I can't breathe, he gasped. I can't breathe. My first instinct was to help him, but what happened next stopped me cold. Instead of calling for medical help or asking someone to call 911, Theodore was desperately struggling with the ring, twisting it and pulling at it like it was burning his skin. I have to get it off, he whispered. I have to get it off right now. Sir, you're having some kind of attack, I said. Let me call an ambulance. No, he shouted, then immediately winced from the effort. Just help me get this ring off first, please. That's when I knew. People having heart attacks don't prioritize jewelry removal. This wasn't about medical distress. This was about guilt, pure, crushing guilt that was eating him alive from the inside. Tell me the truth first, I said, watching him struggle. How did you know my mother? Theodore looked around wildly. The other customers were staring. Maria was already on the phone with 911, and Carmen was rushing over with a glass of water. He was cornered, and he knew it. 20 years ago, he said between gasps. Your mother worked the night shift cleaning offices at Blackwell Tower. She was so young, maybe 30, beautiful, kind, always humming while she worked. His voice cracked. I was 28, cocky, thought I was untouchable because Daddy owned the building. My heart was pounding. What did you do to her? I made advances multiple times. She kept saying no, kept being professional about it, but I wouldn't stop. Theodore's breathing was getting more labored. One night I cornered her in my office. She pushed past me and said if I ever touched her again, she'd report me. So you know what I did. I already knew this wasn't going to be good. I fired her the next morning, called it budget cuts. Then I made sure she couldn't get another cleaning job anywhere in the city. I ruined her references, told other building managers she was unreliable, a thief. Theodore was crying now, actual tears streaming down his face. She had a little girl at home, you, and I destroyed her livelihood because my ego couldn't handle rejection. The paramedics arrived, but Theodore waved them off. I'm not having a heart attack. This is a panic attack, 20 years of guilt finally catching up with me. He finally managed to slide the ring off his finger and held it out to me with a shaking hand. When I heard Constance Morrison died of cancer 2 years ago, owing thousands in medical bills, I couldn't live with myself. I bribed someone at the funeral home to let me take this ring. I thought if I wore it, somehow I could carry the weight of what I'd done. But it's been killing me every single day. I stared at the ring in his palm, my mother's ring, and realized my entire life had been shaped by this man's cruelty. I took my mother's ring from Theodore's trembling hand and slipped it onto my right ring finger. It fit perfectly, just like it always had when I tried it on as a child. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like I had a piece of my mom back with me, but the weight of Theodore's confession was crushing. "There's more you need to know," Theodore said quietly as the paramedics checked his blood pressure. "After your mother died, I found out about the medical bills, $43,000. I've been paying them off anonymously through a shell company for the past 18 months. I stared at him in shock. "What are you talking about?" "The debt collection agency that's been calling you? They work for me. I bought your mother's medical debt and forgave it. The calls stopped 6 months ago, didn't they?" He was right. The constant harassment from collectors had suddenly stopped, and I'd assumed they'd given up. I never imagined someone had been secretly paying off everything we owed. "Why?" I asked. "Because I realized that every dollar of that debt existed because I destroyed your mother's career when she was 30 years old. She should have been able to afford better insurance, better doctors, experimental treatments. Instead, she spent 20 years struggling because of what I did to her." Theodore pulled out his phone and showed me bank statements, payment records, documents I didn't even know existed. "I've been tracking your life from a distance, Delilah. I know you work double shifts to survive. I know you live in that studio apartment on Elm Street. I know you've been carrying guilt about not being able to do more for your mother." The revelation was overwhelming. This man had been a shadow presence in my life, trying to make amends for something I didn't even know he'd done. "I want to offer you something," Theodore continued. "I'm starting a charitable foundation focused on supporting families dealing with medical debt. Families like yours, struggling because our healthcare system is broken and people like me make it worse. I want you to run it." "I don't have any experience with that kind of work." "You have the most important qualification. You understand what it feels like to watch someone you love suffer while bills pile up. You know what it's like to work yourself to exhaustion and still fall short." Theodore's voice was steady now, the panic attack over but the guilt still etched on his face. "Your mother's grace taught me more about human dignity than my Harvard MBA ever did." I looked down at the emerald ring on my finger, catching the light just like it used to on my mother's hand. "I'll do it," I said. "Not for your redemption, but for my mom. She would want me to help other families avoid what we went through." 6 months later, the Constance Morrison Foundation has helped over 200 families negotiate medical debt forgiveness. I wear my mother's ring every day now, not as a reminder of what we lost, but as a symbol of what we can build from the ashes of injustice. Sometimes the most powerful confrontations happen not when we seek revenge, but when we demand truth and choose to transform that truth into hope for others.